everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to make a collapsible, stackable memory wire bracelet today. This bracelet is inspired by the Alex Ani bracelets that are really popular, and it is going to be using some memory wire to get that form and that expandability that they are so popular for. The memory wire is going to allow us to put a lot of beads on. We have a lot of people coming in to our retail locations asking to remake these bracelets because they are quite simple and wondering what type of wire to use. I found that especially for the beaded ones, the memory wire works really, really well for that. So to do this video, we're going to use a different kind of list of materials, and the list of materials that you do need to make this are going to be on the left-hand side. We'll drop down a little bit for you so you can get links to any of those materials if you need to buy online, or if you want to see a list of them underneath the video here in the description. There's a little show more button. You can press on that, drop down, and get a list of all the products you need. You can print it out, take it to your local Potomac Bead Company store, see what you have, and go from there. For these bracelets, again, we're going to be using the memory wire. So I have one on here. It expands and contracts because of the brittleness of the memory wire and it wanting to go back to its form. If you haven't played with memory wire before, this is what it looks like in a huge coil, and it almost looks like a slinky in form. We're going to be using just a very small amount of it, and it does come in different sizes and different colors. The color that I'm using here is going to be the silver plate memory wire, and I have a small one just because that's what I had here. It was the 1.34 in diameter. We also have a 2 and a 2 1/4 in diameter. The bigger your wrist, it really will bend to whatever it is. So smaller is not bad. Bigger sometimes can be too big if you have a little wrist or if you are making one for a kid. A good regular size kind of in the middle would be that 2-inch diameter when you're working with the memory wire. For the project that we're making, you're going to be using about 2 turns of memory wire. So depending on your wrist size and what you're making, I'm using here again that 1 3/4 inch, and I'm using 2 complete turns in order to make my bracelet. As far as beads are concerned, you're going to use about 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches of beads, again depending on your wrist size and how big you want to make it. For my example piece here that I have on the mat, as well as the example piece that I'm wearing, I'm using some check glass, and I'm going to make a third one so I can make them stackable to go on with that check glass as well. I'm using 4mm and 3mm check glass. Here, the bracelet that I have on, I used the Golden Touch Sky color for the whole thing, the whole way around. The one here on the bead mat, I've also used a 4mm, and I've used one of our new pewter tiara cast letter charms just to kind of personalize that touch for it as well. And this is in the cerulean color of that blue, really kind of deep ocean blue in that Golden Touch color. I also have the Aztec Gold in the 3mm check glass that I'm going to be making a pattern with as I do my third and final bracelet, so I can wear them stacked together. On the bracelets too, I like the look of charms, whether or not you want to do a letter charm or a tree or something from nature. We have lots of pewter charms to choose from. Unfortunately, I didn't bring any here with me today, so I just made my own charms out of some 24 gauge wire and some beads that I had in my bead stock, as well as beads that I'm using for my project. As far as pliers are concerned, you need 3 different pliers when you're doing this bracelet. Memory wire, again, is really brittle. It's very hard to cut, and it is going to wreck your regular beading cutters or wire working cutters if you're using them. I suggest when you have to cut the memory wire cutters that we do have they're called high-tech memory wire cutters, and they work great in order to cut that really brittle wire. I also have some cutters here at home that I don't really care if they get really marked up or messed up because they're old, so I'm going to use that for cutting my wire. I also have a wide jaw pliers here, and that helps because it is a little bit wider to bend my brittle and hard to bend memory wire. For the ends of the bracelet where it crosses over, we are going to be using some round nose pliers to pull it all together. I'm working on a bead mat, which is going to be nice to grab on to those ends of those memory wire if I need to cut any off or as I'm working with it. Also, it keeps my beads from rolling around on my bead mat. So to get started, the first thing I want everyone to do is to cut your memory wire. Again, the memory wire is really brittle, and you're going to want to do basically double the size of your wrist in order to give your length that you want it to cut. So if you have a wrist and you want to do it wrist to size, so if you have a 5-inch wrist, you want to cut about 10 inches of wire. And you may have a little bit extra, but you can actually play with it, put it on as you're wearing it, and cut it down to size. Always better to start out with more wire rather than less wire and go from there. So I have my memory wire cut here, and again, I'm doing 2 complete loops of the memory wire. Most of the memory wire packs we have are 12 loops, so you'll be able to do 6 bracelets out of those. 5 conservatively if you want to make them a little bit larger. Because the memory wire does have spring to it, it's going to go back to the form that you had it in and that you want to have it. So I can stretch this out, and I can make this pretty much whatever size I want to. And then it's going to spring back into form and go back to the place where it wanted to and the distance measurement so that they come right back and meet. You can overstretch it and it'll keep its form a little bit that way, but you really want to get it so that it will go back into its shape. The first thing that I'm going to do is create one of my ends for my bracelet. To do that, I'm going to grab on to my wire, and I'm going to grab about 1/4 of an inch back on the wire, and I'm going to turn with my wide jaw pliers here, turn the wire down towards the project. So when you're looking at it here, it's just kind of facing down. The next thing that I'm going to do is grab my round nose pliers, and the round nose pliers, I'm going to make a loop. When I make the loop, I'm going to start at the end here, and again, memory wire is very hard to bend, so bear with it. If you need to and you have a lot of trouble with your round nose pliers, just go in with the needle nose pliers and you can do it that way also. I'm going to go in now and roll my pliers, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on those, keeping that wire in my hand. I'm going to roll it into a rounded eye pin. Once I have that, it's going to stop my beads from falling off the end, and now I get to load all my beads in the style that I want to. So again, it's going to be about 3 to 4 inches of beads, depending on your wrist size. And you can create that pattern all the same. You can do a mix. It's really up to you. The idea of these bracelets a lot of time is that you are wearing them stacked with one another. And you're just going to load on your beads onto your memory wire here. And whatever pattern you want to do, that's fine. You can even keep more of the wire exposed if you want, and have the beads move around it. That's a nice thing. There's no real rules to this. I'm going to do a little color block theme here, adding my beads on. And you can see they'll just sit there until I push them down and move them along my hand as I'm holding the memory wire. So I'm going to continue loading on a couple more inches of beads, and then I'll show you how we're going to bend the other end. I now have all the beads on my wire that I want to use, and I just have my little charm sitting. Push my extra beads kind of off to the side. Again, it's really up to you how many beads you want to use. You can have more wire exposed, less wire exposed. That again is up to you. What I'm going to do next, now that I have all of my beads on, I'm going to go back to the start of my bracelet here, and I'm going to put the one end that doesn't have the loop through the loop end. And that's going to connect that on one of my sides. The next thing I'm going to do is add my charms on to that same wire without the loop. Those charms will just kind of freely move along that wire then, just like the A moves along this one here. Once I have those on and kind of moving along my bracelet, I am going to make my loop on the other side. I'm going to expand the wire to wherever I want it to be as far as the max amount that I want to see of wire. If you want it to be able to stay a little bit smaller, you can pull a little bit more wire back. That's up to you. I'm going to use all of the wire that I cut. So I'm going to make this bracelet a fair amount bigger than my previous one. The first step that I'm going to do to close off the bracelet is I'm going to mirror the ends, and this one you can see it really easily here. One of the wires that's on the bottom, the loop is turned up and down towards the interior of the bracelet. The next loop is turned down and towards the front of the bracelet. I want those alternating methods for the loops so that way the bracelet sits really, really nicely. My first loop that I've made here, that my charm wants to hang out in, I'll go in and make sure that's really closed. That first loop is turned down towards the bottom of the bracelet. This next loop that I create, I want to make it turn up. Just like the starter side, I'm going to go in with my pliers here, and I'm going to go back about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to turn the wire up. Next, what I'm going to do is make my loop on this side in order to keep the bracelet closed. Go back with your round nose pliers, and again, roll them down towards that loop. If you need to, you can make your loop first and do your bend second, but that's going to create that eye pin there. You want to push all of your beads away from that opening there, so they're all to one side. And then I'm going to grab back on to the opposite side, open up that loop that I've created, just the tiniest little bit, slide that other side of wire in, come back then and just use my needle nose pliers to pinch that loop that I've created shut. And if you need to again, you can kind of make it right angled again by using your wide jaw pliers. I'm going to go back to the first side, finagle my charm out of there, and then do the same thing, making sure that that loop is closed so the charm doesn't become part of the loop, and also that it's turned nice and straight up so the bracelet looks nice and elegant and nice and sophisticated. I think wire working looks really nice when it's done kind of in a perfectionist mindset. Once you're done that, then you have your bracelet completely finished. It's going to have those 2 pieces of memory wire that overlap on the sides. When you put it on, you just stretch those pieces open, and then when you let go, those will collapse. It slides really, really easily onto the wrist because you're going to open that up. Those wires come back. You let go, and the bracelet goes on. So you can see I made this one a lot bigger. This one's a lot smaller. So you can make it varying sizes as you work with it and work with a different memory wire. The size of the memory wire, again, smaller is good if you're doing child's bracelets. The bigger memory wire will work better for adults. If you are doing an adult bracelet, you can also get the smaller size, that 1 3/4 meter size. And again, that'll stretch to make a bigger bracelet like I am wearing. So that gives you the fun idea of doing that memory wire collapsible, expandable. I have them on both wrists. Memory wire bracelet, you can do them with charms, without charms, gemstones, check glass. So it's a really fun way also to use up some of that different glass. They look great when they're stacked one next to each other where you're wearing a couple, and have a fair amount of charms on there as well. So again, you can play around, have fun. The memory wire is a little brittle, so if you are doing it with kids, you will need to do their loops and bend them for them because it is hard to get that bend on. So just be aware of that before you use the memory wire. But once you have it, it's really quick. It's a very simple gift and thoughtful idea if you kind of personalize it with some of those charms like the letter charms that we have. But have fun making these little memory wire expandable and contractible stackable bracelets. Again, they have that Alex Ani inspiration look to them, but you can make them all your own by changing up the designs, the length of wire showing, what charms you're having, and really have fun creating. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. If you want to get more ideas for gift giving or wire working or bead weaving or just different videos showing you new products that we have, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can also check us out on Facebook And you can check us out at PotomacBeads.com to get any of the materials that you need to create here, or to view our locations page to see where the different bead stores are, and hopefully you get a chance to visit us at one of them soon. Thanks a lot, everyone, and have fun creating these expandable bracelets.